It's really fun. It's really
A bunch of our professors are supposed to be here.
Victoria had like names.
Yeah. I'm like, if Andrew
You can follow
Westall.
up.
I just
if
admitted you, Linda, so you should be
Andrew
okay.
Westall does not arrive,
Where
I will block him as the professor.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna mute you guys. For everybody who's online, we'll get started in a few minutes.
Like I was like, oh, I'll see you there. She's like, I'm not driving. We're not done. One of the ones where we use their computer, it made me upgrade their Zoom. I wish I would. And then we put it on gallery and it didn't show the right person speaking. But it recorded the right person speaking.
Oh, that's weird.
Interesting.
Maybe
You know what
gallery.
I'm gonna do? So everybody's online, we'll get started in a few minutes.
Hello, everybody. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. Is that okay, Colleen? Good test? No? Okay. Okay, hello, everybody at home and everybody here. I'm going to begin with our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, which include the Ottawa, Ojibwe, the Potawatomi Nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. We also acknowledge the Wendat Nation, Huron, who occupied these lands prior to the middle of the 17th century. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples in this land. We are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. So welcome everybody to March Word Up. Oh, we're going to start recording. Sorry. Okay. Back in progress is great. So tonight is International Women's Day Writers Panel. So anyone online, just please make sure your mics are muted until you get a chance to ask your questions of these ladies. Tonight we're joined by Barrie's first female poet laureate, Victoria Butler. And poet and collage artist, Caitlin McKenzie. And managing editor of Block Party. See, now my brain wants to go Isla. Isla. Yeah, so sorry. Isla. So we're going to ask a few panel questions, but before we do that, and then at the very end, we're going to do open mic where you guys get to wow us with your stuff. We're going to ask each of you to, each of the panelists to introduce yourselves. So you guys have 5 minutes each of us. You have to mute yourself.
There we go. Who wants to go first?
I can. I am Caitlin McKenzie. I am a poet and collage artist, but my training in writing began at York University in the playwriting program. So I do have a diploma in playwriting. I have been published in several literary magazines. I served as an editor on the Northern Appeal, and I have a chapbook, my second chapbook being published by Ethel Micro Press in July called Wifehood. So, yeah. that's me.
I'm gonna sneeze.
Oh,
Can
here
you
we go.
go while I sneeze?
Sure. I'm Isla McLaughlin. Pronouns are she and they. I've traveled out here from Pickering today, where I am a poet, writer, and the managing editor and co-founder of Block Party Magazine, which is an independent magazine and chapbook press. I started my writing career at the University of Toronto Scarborough, where I'm a major in creative writing and arts and media management. And I have a chapbook out. My debut chapbook came out last August. It's called Girl Online, and it's with Gap Riot Press.
Okay, the sneeze isn't happening, so it might just happen later. So sorry. I'm Victoria Butler. I was the first female poet laureate of Barrie. I served my term from 2018 to 2022. I was also the youngest person to ever be poet laureate in Barrie. I'm the co-founder, and I used to be editor-in-chief of the Northern Appeal, which was a literary magazine that published creative work from artists in Simcoe County. I'm currently finishing my undergrad at the University of Toronto Scarborough, majoring in creative writing, minoring in women and gender studies and literature. What else is there about me? Oh, I have my debut collection of poetry, Little Miracles, came out with Black Moss Press in 2021, and I have 2 self-published chapbooks as well. I live in Barrie with my 2 cats, and you can clap for them. Yeah. They're excellent. But yeah, I'm really excited to be here today. I'm really thankful that Linda asked me to be on this panel. And I'm excited to chat with all you guys about writing and whatever comes up. So
So the panel begins. So the first question, actually I have a lot of long ones. So the International Women's Day 2023 campaign theme is #embrace equity. So we're being asked to understand the difference between equity and equality. So equality means each individual or group of people is given the same resources or opportunities. Equity recognizes that each person has different circumstances and allocates the resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. So like a person in a wheelchair can't use a regular normal bike, but could use a specially designed bicycle. So how do we write about equity? So I'm going to turn this over to whoever wants to take that one first. Colleen's I'll unmute myself or mute myself.
to you.
Just make sure you guys unmute.
I think when writing about equity, we need to sincerely and honestly consider the place we hold within the world and within the systems that we both uphold and are a victim of every day. So when I write about equity, it is coming from a perspective of a white woman who has a lot of privilege. And I can only write about my own experience, but I think more important than writing about equity is listening to people who know what they need in order to have equity. Yeah, I think that would be where I'd go with that.
Mhm.
What do you guys think?
From like a managerial side of the arts,
Mm.
running like
Yeah.
Block Party, and I'm sure you had the same with the Northern Appeal, just being conscious of like any biases that you may have, how accessible you make your submission periods, who is being represented in each issue is extremely important. Yeah, it's a ongoing conversation, and you put the entire responsibility on yourself to learn about how to practice equity daily in your operations. Yeah, it's no one's job to tell you how to accommodate them. It's great when they do, but you should know systematically how to do that by doing your own research and taking classes. There's tons of great programs that already have that embedded. I'm sure you had some level of that at York as well. Like U of T has been great for that. So yeah.
I think too is like giving yourself permission to mess up when writing or talking about equity, like especially from speaking from me again, I'm a white woman who's speaking from a place of privilege. I'm going to end up saying something or potentially writing something that someone's going to be like, this really doesn't like apply to me, or this doesn't work with me, or like this upset me in some way. And instead of turning the conversation and being like, oh, I feel terrible. Like, oh no, it's not about that. It's about like constantly learning how to be better. So I think when, writing or any sort of involvement with writing about the subject is to kind of silence your ego and like to be very open to other people's, what they need and their experiences.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think this is an important question, really, because it's similar but not the same. Yeah. So devaluing creators, endangering creativity, a Writers Union of Canada study, and it's a long title, but that's the title of the study, from 2015, shows an embarrassing gender gap in writers' incomes in Canada. Again, this was 2015, so it was a little while ago, and I couldn't find anything more recent. So with women writers, they were earning just 55% of the income earned by their male counterparts. Worse, writers in Canada are making 27% less from their writing than they were making in 1998. That I think continues to be accurate. So that was one last surveyed. So what's more, a full 45% of those surveyed indicated they are working harder in order to earn that lower amount. So with this in mind, why do you write?
I can start with that one. I mean, I never woke up and was like, wow, I want fame and fortune. I do, but I was never like, oh, writing is going to get me there. Like, it's kind of something that, I mean, even in school, like our professors are like, you're never going to make any money doing this. And it's like, I think that they're right. And I also disagree with them in some ways, because I have found a way, like, I've found a way to make money off it. Yeah, it's not like my primary income. Like it pays for my cat's litter and like that's about it, which is quite expensive.
Hey,
so
that's
it's good. But like, you have to value yourself in order for other people to value you. So if you are going to something and like you get invited, like I always tell poets, like, do not like settle for just like going to something for exposure. Like, yeah, when you're first starting out, you kind of have to like bite the bullet and do that a little bit. But you really need to like, when someone invites you to something, like my first question is always, what's your budget? And like, I always say, I don't leave the house for less than $350 an hour for like writing things. And like, yeah, I'm obviously going to like make exceptions for like great opportunities or like charity things and whatnot, but people will pay it. Like, people will pay your fee if they want you. But if you continually undervalue yourself and say like, oh no, like I'll do it for free, or like, or they refuse to pay you, I mean, take it if you really want it, but don't feel like you have to, just because I think writing is particularly undercut constantly. And like poets and artists are always struggling with this idea of like not being seen as like a real job or like real work. That's just not true. Like it is. Like, writing is really difficult. It's a craft. It's a skill set that you develop. And I think that like you really need to just be firm and be like, this is my budget. If you like, I don't know, if some like wonderful children's group came to me and was like, we don't have a huge budget, I'm not going to be like, well, screw the children, I'm not going to do that. But you can use discretion. But I think it's very important to know your worth as a writer and as a performer and as a speaker. So, and I also just write because I really enjoy it. Yeah.
I think also having a relationship with capitalism when you're participating in making your art is a really difficult negotiation to have. Because when I'm writing, I'm not thinking about, I'm going to make $50 off this poem if I get it published. Like, I'm thinking about communicating something that I can't communicate otherwise.
The money's like Nice bonus.
Yeah, but you have to negotiate that because we
Mhm.
have to live.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really difficult thing to like hear those statistics and to know that that is true, that there are people that
Mhm.
are absolutely fantastic at this art form who can't make a living doing this. But my negotiation with capitalism, the reason that I write is kind of bucking against it. Like, I don't give a shit if you pay me. I'm gonna fucking try to communicate. Sorry. I apologize about cursing. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar to what Victoria and Caitlin have said. Like, I'd be a hypocrite to be sitting up here and telling you you're going to get paid for all of your work, because I run a literary magazine that does not pay our contributors, because we don't have a budget annually. Like, what we run with is out of mine and my co-founder's pocket. But we take that cost because we love what we do, and we love the community, and we love getting people's work out there and giving them a space. And the contributors who've submitted, they submit to us because they love what we do and they love the work we're platforming. It's a lot of give and take, and the value of your work doesn't always necessarily have to be monetary, and the value of the experience doesn't necessarily have to be monetary, but knowing that is important. Like, if I'm giving something to a situation, if I'm giving expertise or what my degree that I've paid for has provided me, then I should be getting paid for it.
Absolutely.
If I'm participating in community and I have that discretion that I'm okay showing up and doing an open mic or submitting to a magazine that doesn't pay, that's my choice because I want to participate in it. I think it's just important to know, as an artist, you have that choice.
Yeah.
You can dedicate yourself to working professionally. You can do some sort of blend. You can do it community-based. Like, there's tons of options and you can make it work. Just honoring yourself and knowing that neither choice or decision you make is invalid. That's just finding value in what you do in any way.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, as a visual artist, and a writer, I could say my add to what you guys have said is I'm compelled to it. Like, I don't know how not to.
Yeah.
I could do lots of other things, but I don't want to, really. So yeah, I don't know how not to do it. Yeah. And I would say I've developed my craft as a visual artist over the years far more than as a writer. And it is a lot of work to develop, and it does take some courses and money and time and effort. So, to get good at any of this stuff. So
People should pay you for it.
yeah.
If they can.
So there is better news. According to a Writers Union of Canada survey from 2021, women and men were equally represented by literary agents. Women stated they received mentorship and encouragement, and 35% of women versus 28% of men indicated receiving support in the form of grants, work, and award opportunities. So has this been your career experience so far? And are you experiencing any exclusion because of your gender?
I can start this one.
Yeah.
I haven't experienced it academically, specifically at University of Toronto Scarborough in their creative writing program. They have been exceptional. But in professional experiences, yes, I've been at conferences or workshops, and I've brought ideas to the table and my expertise to the table. And I've had that like argued against publicly in very unprofessional manners and not had that addressed at all. Which it's like I found exclusion based on gender in professional writing settings to be very situational. And only the women in the room necessarily pick up on it, because as soon as something like that had happened to me, every single woman in the room's hand shot up to respond. So you can tell that
That's there.
Yeah, Victoria was there and her hand shot up to immediately. I didn't take it to heart because it's just something that every woman had kind of grown accustomed to, but it's not great. So that's why I'm so grateful for programs like University of Toronto Scarborough, where that hasn't been an issue. I just wouldn't go back to that setting if I couldn't. You just have to judge it place by place.
Yeah, it is an unfortunate trial and error of finding spaces in which you can present the way we present and still be taken seriously. yeah, it's difficult to walk into those spaces not knowing what's going to happen when specifically writing and a lot of other art forms are very community based, like you're looking to find a community in which to create. So finding communities that aren't necessarily welcoming is very difficult.
Yeah, I don't know if I've experienced necessarily discrimination based off my gender. I've definitely experienced discrimination based off of being a writer, which is kind of weird, but just I've had people, you know, kind of like I mentioned earlier, they brush it aside or say like, well, it's not a real job. Like you don't actually do anything. Like I've had that sort of experience. But yeah, like Isla was saying, like there are some really great programs. Like I can't speak for, I know Concordia has one as well. I can't speak for them, but like there have been a lot of, I think the universities do a really good job of being aware of that conversation around equity, like we were just talking about, and like people need different things. So there's a lot of different, there's a lot of scholarships available. There's a lot of financial help. There's a lot of accessibility resources that have really helped us a lot. So I'm very grateful for that. I think if I was writing a few years ago, I don't know if it would be the case. Like that study was from 2021, right? So that's good to hear that we're sort of on a upward trajectory. But I feel like if it, even in like the early 2000s, I wonder if it would be the same thing.
So that's indicative of some positive change. So
Yeah,
the
thank God.
Yeah.
Positive change. We love positive change. Yeah.
So I think there's some more to come. Female writers have paved the way for us. So who has made the biggest impact on you? And can you tell us about any specific female writers who shaped you and your writing?
For me, the first person that jumps to mind is Carmen Maria Machado. Work like in the Dream House as a queer woman made me feel seen, and like the work that I wanted to create, the world in which I lived, was something that someone else really wanted to create work in that vein. And to see how incredibly successful she is was a big source of hope, I think. There's so many femme writers that have meant a lot to me. Joan Didion means a lot to me. Audre Lorde means a lot to me. There's so many. But the first one that jumped to mind is Carmen Maria Machado. So.
Mine would probably be Miriam Taves. I remember I met her when I was 16. She was doing some reading in like Creemore at like a church, and somehow I ended up there.
Oh no.
Yeah. But I remember when I read her book, Complicated Kindness, it was I was around the same age as like the protagonist. So I really felt it was like one of the first books I read that was like, oh, like I exist outside of myself. And like I saw, like I realized that I could be a writer, which sounds like I am comparing myself to like I'm the same level of writing as Miriam Taves, which I'm not. I'm a very cocky person. I'm not that cocky. But she writes in a way that is so honest, and I get really frustrated with writers that beat around the bush, and she writes things so simply and yet so beautifully. And I've always really appreciated that about her. And she's not afraid to tackle really difficult issues. Like she a few years ago, she wrote Women Talking, which is now I see some recognition in the crowd over Women Talking being brought up. But she, like that, I won't go into it because it's a very bit of a dark tale. But if you look it up, it's like she's not afraid to shy away from stuff that is scary, which I really appreciate. I met her a second time. Where were we? It was like
It was in Toronto at the
was
Writers'
it
Festival.
Toronto? Yeah, there was a play written about like
I think it was, oh, sorry.
It was like a play performance of women talking, and I met her again, and I get so nervous around people I admire. So I think all I said was like, hi, it's so hot in here. I'm so sweaty. Like that was all I said to her.
Really hot.
But I was just like, oh man. So I hope Miriam Tays remembers me as the sweaty girl from the international writers thing. But she is always one of the first people that comes to mind. Like she's shaped me in so much of what I do. And I'm just so grateful for her. And I can't wait to meet her again someday and hopefully make a better impression.
Don't just go up again and be like, I'm still sweating.
Still sweating.
I have a lot of female and gender fluid or non-binary artists that have inspired me in my work. Hazel Grace Plante of Little Blue Encyclopedia for Vivian is probably one of the greatest books I have ever read. It's the top of my list. It's about two trans women and their experience of friendship, even past one of their death, through a really kitschy reality, like not even reality show. It's a kitschy show that didn't air more than a season that they would watch together. And Plante's writing just really resonated with me because it was in novella form. It was short and it was using a ton of like pop culture that was imagined to tell this beautiful narrative. Victoria and Baba Z is a poet I follow very closely. They're also an alumni of the program that Victoria Butler and I are in.
Yeah, I thought you were gonna say me. I was like,
Oh, and Victoria. Yeah, and their work is really, really incredible. They do a lot with the eye, which I think is really important to see in female and non-binary works, because this idea around eye has kind of been beaten out of literary works for a long time because men like to be super elusive. And what's that, guys? When the person from our class liked, he thought he was him, that famous male author.
oh God, which one? Famous male author.
I don't even know his name, but every male author thinks he's this male author because they don't say what they're actually thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to see when women and non-binary people write how they feel inclined to, and it's received well, even if it's not with the traditional literary trends. Yeah.
That leads really well into the next question. So I found something on the International Women's Day website, and the quote is, often women find it hard to use traditional forms of writing and literary conventions to convey personal experiences. Language has been created and shaped by men, and too often women's experiences have been told from the male perspective. So do you believe that the English language was developed from a masculine perspective? And do you believe women's experiences and characters have been skewed by being presented or represented by men?
Kind of what you just said.
Yeah.
Can elaborate.
Okay.
Do you want me to
first?
Or do you want us to go?
No, it's okay. I'll go first. I don't know enough about linguistics and how language has evolved to say if it actually has stemmed from like male creation. I'm assuming not. I'm assuming it's pretty egalitarian at the beginning and everyone was kind of working together to make words. I think specifically how it relates to literature, I don't really care for male representations of women in work anymore. I just don't read it if I don't find it accurate. But I am saying that as someone who read John Green's Looking for Alaska and made it my entire identity as a child. And if you don't know that, that is a manic pixie dream girl to the core. She had no personality. She was just loved by a guy and that was supposed to save her. And I was like, this is gold. Like, this is right. But I did grow out of that and I grew critical thinking skills, which was super helpful. And that's no hate to John Green. I still love that book and I read it too regularly. But I know that that's not an accurate representation of a young woman. So now I'm reading work by women and queer people. And I find that a lot more reflective of what I see in the people around me.
A really interesting piece of that question was around communication. And something that I learned, because I'm a bit of a nerd, is that when you are trying to communicate something that deeply distresses you, let's say you've been through trauma or something really difficult, the communication center of your brain actually shuts off. So for me specifically, the ability to write poetry is a way to bypass that communication system shutting down. And that's just a biological thing because we're animals who are self-actualized somehow. And I just really like that part of the question. So I just wanted to speak to that little bit of trivia.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that, not to be the person to bring up Sylvia Plath, but here I am. But I read this essay forever ago and I cannot find it. I've been trying to find it forever. I tried to find it for tonight and I cannot find it. I think it's by Elizabeth Wurtzel, where she talked about Sylvia Plath had a lot of issue breaking into the poetry scene during like kind of her rise to fame, because she was famous for using the I statements and talking about herself. And that was seen, I mean, she was coming up alongside like 50s, 60s, so like the Beat generation and whatnot, that was primarily men. So she was really looked down upon for quite a while. And so was the idea of like writing with the I and like writing about your emotions, because that was seen as like, you don't want to do that, you gotta lock it up. Yeah, confessional style of writing, which is great in my opinion. I think it's fabulous.
Absolutely.
But I think that there's like the women writers who've come before us have done so much work to push back from that. And I mean, now look, like Sylvia Plath is one of the most beloved, well, tragic and beloved figures in like women's writing history, I would say. But I definitely think that it is hard to be taken seriously as a female writer a lot of the time, because you think like women are the marked sex. Like you don't get called a female, the women's soccer league or the women's football league. Like the men are the standard, like they're
deviate from the form.
Yeah. So it's the same thing with writing, where like, chick lit, what is that? It's specifically for women. It's great. I love it. I read it all the time. But I've started doing a thing where I'll call things like man books or like man movies. And it's really ruffled some feathers, which is really fun. But it's like, it shouldn't necessarily be gendered, but like it is, because there's specifically subjects that are pertaining to things women like. Well, what does that even mean in today's day and age? Like what, just because it's romantic? Like it is like, again, yeah, we deviate from the norm of what masculinity is, and we've had to push back against that and sort of create our own language, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, if you go back far enough in history, we didn't talk about emotions. People were perceived as weak, if we talked about emotions. So we've really flipped that, which is good, a few times.
Yeah.
Acrobatics around that. So that's good. All right. So women and girls around the world have different struggles. Some are legally unable to be educated, to work or drive, and record numbers worldwide are disenfranchised due to war and climate change or political unrest. So is it the writer's responsibility to bring these women's issues to light in their work?
Big sigh.
I don't think it's the writer's job to bring those stories to work. I think it's the writer's job to be reading those stories and actively seeking them out from people who can speak on them themselves. There is a lot of space for writers like us in publishing already, but that's not to say that there's plenty of work out there that is great representation for women all over the world. And I don't think any of us would be up here or speaking about writing if we weren't actively engaging with those texts as well. That's how you form thoughts on the world and equity, and it's not our place to represent those stories. It's our responsibility as people to engage with them.
I read a really beautiful essay a few years ago talking about how it's our moral obligation as humans to read each other's stories. Now, not even necessarily coming from a writing perspective, just to listen to each other's stories. So I don't think I can speak to someone oceans away's story. I don't think I can write their story, but I can write mine, and I want to read theirs, and I want them to read mine too. So I think that's where I land.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that
Mm.
it's my place to use my platform to, yeah, exactly.
Mm.
There's lots of people that are writing about these things and these experiences, and I don't feel like profiting off of them personally. I don't think
Ding,
that's
ding, ding.
I don't think that's proper when there are so many incredible writers that aren't getting the opportunity to have the platform that I have to share that and to have it come from directly from the source.
Yeah.
So I think that the higher you get within
Mhm.
the sort of writing world, the greater the responsibility is to make sure that more stories than other than your own are being heard.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just gonna
Yeah, go ahead.
I was editor-in-chief of my own little literary magazine, Shaking the Sheets, and I received a lot of submissions that wrote from a place that was not their lived experience. And it was difficult to read those things because it was putting on a skin that wasn't yours. Yeah, so I think I just wanted to mention that.
Publishing has made like huge leaps and bounds though,
Oh,
like
yeah.
within the past 2 decades, like there's no reason to write stories that aren't yours, because there is a lot of really, really good work out there. Like
good work.
actively seek it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Tell your library to order it.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Okay. So where does your gender fit into your writing? Is it something that you're conscious of when writing, or do you allow it to present itself more organically?
I'm always writing about being a woman.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
can't stop.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it influences so much of what I do. Like personally, I like the last couple projects I've done have been about women in Barrie specifically. The last chapbook I did was about women in Barrie who have been murdered throughout our history. And I was using taking the articles that were about them and trying to turn them into poetry. And from that, all the sales from that went towards the women's shelter. Because again, I don't want to profit off of something like that. But I think that just the experience of womanhood is fascinating. It's fluid, it's heartbreaking, it's devastating, and it's absolutely beautiful and incredible. And it influences every single thing that I do all the time. I'm constantly inspired by it. I think that's why it comes out in so much of my work. I wish I could shake it, but I can't, because it's always there. It's always there when I go to the page, because I think it's like I'm proud of being a woman and I'm proud of the women in my life, and I want to explore that as much as I possibly can. So I think gender has a huge impact on my work specifically.
Yeah. As a genderqueer person who still claims woman as mine, because I live in this body and everyone sees me as woman, and I am, and I agree. I am so proud of femininity and what womanhood has done. But I think I directly engage with that strange amorphous feeling of both being in conversation with what gender means and how I fall outside of it, and also being a wife and what that has meant historically, and how that is constantly an image that is projected onto me without my consent. So I think, how could I not want to explore how that is affected, not just me, but every genderqueer person who wants to engage with the world and engage creatively.
I tried to write a short story a few years ago, and I brought it to workshop, and it was of 2 male characters. And I went into workshop and they said, these are female characters with male pronouns. Which was true. I wrote a friendship between 2 girls because it was like a period piece too. And they're like, this is too tender. Like this is so nice and lovely. And this isn't how men behave. not to say that they don't, but based on gender expectations and also just the language they were using, like it was two girls on the page hanging out. And I everything I write unintentionally becomes a piece about the women in my life, whether I set out to do that or not.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of erasing my brothers from all of my work. They don't show up. They're referenced briefly, but my sister's a character in my nonfiction because it's so much more natural for me as a writer to find women on the page and like just to represent them. And that's not even to say that the conversations I have with women are more meaningful, but they definitely make for better fiction, better stories, and they definitely will sell better. So that's what I do. It's not something I intentionally set out to do, but I've just found it works.
Yeah.
Women.
Women.
Love
women.
You think this was International Women's Day panel or something?
No.
Crazy.
Okay, so that's it for my questions. Does anyone here have any questions? Anyone?
I have a question.
Oh, Colleen's had a question.
Colleen.
Have to be a question because I don't know here, but I'm curious if you've noticed sort of different approaches to women in generations, like older writers, like women Barrie and stuff like that.
For everyone at home, hi everyone. It's really weird though, two audiences. The question was from the wonderful Colleen. How, if we've seen any differences between generations between female writers. That was it, right? That was your question. Okay, stunning. I mean, I see differences even between, you're 5 years younger than me?
21.
Yeah. So, and I see so many differences between Isla and myself. I don't think anything negative, but just there's a lot of things that like she picks up on that I don't necessarily, because I'm, I don't know, jaded now, I guess. But like, I think there's also, I don't want to get myself in trouble.
Do it.
But I think about like, there's been a lot of issues, I think, with some of the like beloved older writers, like even some of my heroes like Margaret Atwood and Joyce Carol Oates, that have just, they hold on to a lot of ideas from that were popular when they were up and coming writers that they're still very cemented into their minds. And it can be really frustrating to see someone who like, yeah, Margaret Atwood wrote The Handmaid's Tale and it was like definitive of my grade 12 year and changed my life and blah, blah, blah. But like to see that and to see how different she is and like our value system and our morals can be really disheartening and really difficult. So, but then there's other experiences where I look to like, yeah, Miriam Taves, and I'm just like, you are who I want to be at that age. Like you are, like, I want to follow the route that you've laid this path and I want to follow it. And like, and I also just get so much energy from younger writers. Like truly it's very rejuvenating. I'm very fortunate to be around younger writers all the time. And it's very much, a rejuvenation, and it's exciting. And sometimes when I feel like I get too bogged down with the idea of like, oh my God, I got to make money, I got to pay rent, like, how am I going to make money this month off of writing? It's like, I can look to just people that are like, I'm writing because I love it. And that's like why I do it too. But sometimes you can get a little bit lost when you're, trying to live. But I think there's definitely differences in the generations, and there's some good and some bad for sure.
Yeah, I think also as we reflect back on those heroes of writing, like the Margaret Atwood instance, I think once you become a public figure like that, regardless of your gender, that interaction with power is going to affect how you write. It's going to affect your value system. And I think that's something I've definitely noticed from people who gain notoriety, regardless of gender.
I didn't want to call Victoria jaded, but Victoria said it first, so it's okay. I think that being a younger writer, and since the women and non-binary people before me have done so much work, that's why I get to be a bit more enthusiastic about writing consistently. Because like I don't think I take it for granted. I'm very appreciative and grateful, but it's not something I'll register immediately. Like I live in a very beautiful place of literature right now, that's ever growing and ever changing and for the better. But like even the fact that sometimes the negative comments that I'm receiving in workshop that aren't necessarily craft comments are from another female writer, like that's exciting. Women can critique other women now, and that's the problem, instead of like this huge systematic issue of like women not being taken seriously in workshop at all. So I live in a very different world of writing than what it was 5 years before, and I hope I live in a very different world of writing 5 years from now that's getting better. And then assholes are just assholes, and they're not sexist assholes.
True, yeah. Yay.
Have the assholes without the titles.
Yeah, just
Neutral asshole.
I know you're cussing a lot.
I really am. I'm so sorry.
Normally
That's 50 cents a swear.
That's a lot of sense.
Normally I'm this cusser.
Yeah, I would say a lot of things have changed. I mean, some days I feel really old and some days I don't. But I will say that my own mother did not want me to go to college. Because I don't know, if it's because of I'm a girl, or partly because she just felt like this was for other people. And it was always kind of a struggle for me. And so when I see you guys all getting an education and doing well and doing something with it, and see, I think it's great, and you're speaking to your own experience, which is not going to be the same as mine. So we do need to hear it and keep reading it, which kind of goes back to, I guess, the previous question, right? Do we have any questions from the audience? Any other ones? Bruce has a question.
Be a representative of a couple of generations. You talked about differences, and Margaret Atwood being an example, one example of that. But I didn't hear what the differences are. Can you articulate?
Like the differences between me and
Like in value system, is that?
No, the value system was one example that it changed. That was one that changed with power, or exposure, if you will, whatever. Sure, that's one. How was that? And then Victoria,
yes.
you're talking about the differences that the older generation has been around, Margaret Atwood, an example. We're hanging on to their older values or their beliefs.
You just want
to. So I guess one and then the other. What are the different examples?
Margaret Atwood just needs to not have Twitter, I think. Like, I think the issue that I find is like, I can't think exactly of what happened, but I know that there's been some issues with like Margaret Atwood being very supportive of like a lot of like J.K. Rowling's anti-trans sentiments and things like that. Like, that's more what I'm talking about, where it's like, I don't share those beliefs. I see a lot of issues with that. So it's more things like that, like her tweeting in support of stuff that I'm like, Maggie, just no. Yeah, sometimes she's a bit of a pain, but I still love her. But yeah.
And I think it comes back again to a negotiation with power, right? So these are beliefs, the transphobic beliefs are a negotiation with things that make her feel unsafe. And I think that while we should certainly leave room to not shut down our minds and truly be kind to each other, I do think feeling like you can talk about being transphobic in a public forum like Twitter with like thousands of followers just makes our value systems diametrically opposed. Not that I think she is automatically a terrible, terrible person, but I do think that that's where I was coming from in terms of value systems differing and that kind of thing. Yeah. Of course.
no
Thanks for the
problem.
question.
Yeah.
Anybody online? You can just unmute and ask.
Who's in this chat?
Who's chatting?
No, they have to put it in the chat because we can't hear them.
Oh, well, you have to put it in the chat. Sorry.
Most language trends actually start with young women. This is one of our friends, Bella,
Who's a
who's a
linguist?
linguist. She's a linguist.
Thanks, Bella.
That's actually so beautiful. I wish you were here right now.
Yeah. It's a fun fact.
It's me.
I don't see any questions in the chat.
Somebody said most language trends actually start with young women. That makes sense to me because we're known to be more talkative than men overall. I think we say more words or something.
It's also just a mode for
No,
survival.
I think it depends on the
Mhm.
person.
Communication.
In my house, my husband talks more than I do, so.
My wife keeps telling me that.
Ah. Any other questions from the group here? Oh, we have two. Okay.
Mine is, no, yours is definitely better.
Really interesting movie that we ran across a couple of years ago. Not necessarily about the creation of a language, but the creation of, I think it was the Oxford Dictionary.
Ooh.
One of them. And it's called The Professor and the Madman.
Hmm.
Very, very, very cool movie.
Hmm.
And it was how the Oxford Dictionary got created through an extensive call out for submissions of people's words. They would submit a word and the definition of that word, and thousands of submissions came into them. But it just so happens that one of them was in prison, and the other one was forming a dictionary. The guy in prison started to submit so many words that they started to work together. And that's why they call him the Professor of the Matter. Very good.
Sounds like the Oxford
Sounds
Dictionary is
great.
like the original literary magazine.
Yeah. That's very cool.
Very cool.
So we just learned about a movie called The Professor and the Madman, so you gotta Google that.
Yeah.
And you got one?
Maddie.
I was gonna say, describe being a woman writer in 3 words, 3 adjectives.
Terrible.
Oh,
Awesome. Cool.
We have to repeat the question.
Oh,
Someone just asked, Maddie just asked us to describe being a woman writer in 3 adjectives, and that's torture.
see, I don't think it's torture.
Awesome.
Awesome, frustrating. Actually, I don't like the word awesome. I'm gonna rescind the word awesome. Okay, frustrating, magical, and fine. I don't know.
I'd say laborious,
Ooh.
fulfilling. No, laborious, meaningful.
Oh, you took mine.
Sorry, that captures it better than
Come
fulfilling because it's
on.
meaningful. It's not always fulfilling.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Laborious, meaningful, and oh my God, empowering. I don't like
True, it is empowering.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
Well, meaningful, empowering.
There's so much pressure on the last word. Say awesome.
Awesome.
Great.
Stunning.
Wonderful.
okay, so I think this brings us to open mic. So I think we could start. Do you guys want to do a reading?
Sure, yeah.
Let's do it from there or from here. And then anyone here who's got some stuff to read for?
I know them.
These are my books.
These are my girls.
I can start while you guys are
Okay,
getting
I'm
your
gonna go on
things
mute.
out.
You're around.
Yeah. So this is my collection I mentioned earlier, which was all about women throughout Barrie's history who have been murdered or experienced domestic violence. Each poem has a piece of artwork alongside of it, and it raised $1,000 for the women's shelter, which is very cool. Yeah. So this piece I'm going to read, I don't know if anyone here follows city council. But but a few years ago, there was a sexual assault case that came to council, and a large majority of our city councilors at the time decided to not punish, forget exactly, it was a bunch of bureaucracy, but they basically elected to not have the integrity commissioner investigate. And now the complainant is suing her assailant, which rocks. Because yeah, I know. Well, not really. It's actually a really long, horrible process. But I wrote this poem about just not being acknowledged, not having this horrible pain and this horrible thing that's happened to you, and you're begging for someone to care, and people just don't. It's called Staff Report HRS 00220. Subject line HR, October 20th, 2020. Complainant writes, I like to think I could be safe here, in my home and in my mind, when I open the window and when I wake up, in the sun and in the lake and in the darkness. I like the idea of a world where you do not come first, where I am both seen for what I am and treated like a regular thing, a passerby, a member of a crowd who goes out and comes home all the same. My body sweats and moves and aches, and no one notices. I imagine myself naked, sprawled across a wooden table, swarming with guests and waitstaff, and everyone sees through me like expensive decor. And when you reach out to touch it, the whole evening is ruined. People scorn and spit at your feet as you leave bruises on my body with your careless fists. They treat you like a misbehaved child. The manager is called. You are escorted out and never invited back. You cannot just touch whatever you want, someone says. Everyone is mournful of the moments just before my perceived ruin. I am not surprised by your actions, simply relieved at the consequences. Should I read another one? I don't know how long we. Oh, okay. I will read this one as well. Actually, the artist is in the room with us. We have Nicole Valletta in the front row. She did this incredible screen print. This poem was inspired by a woman named Michelle Basson. The only information I had about Michelle was from Mary Fletcher Harris, who is a queen. She does, what is it called? Fire and Mist Stories, I believe. And she does a lot of historical information for Barrie Today. She'll like do walking tours around Barrie about different things that have happened in different places. She's super cool. Follow her Facebook page. But she remembered Michelle from her fifth grade or third grade class, and she just sent me a picture of Michelle and when she was a little girl, and just told me about the last memory she had of her before she was murdered. So I wrote this one. It's for Mary. And it's called Int'l's Super 40 Greats 1975. Michelle Basson is third from the left, a little girl with slouched shoulders and hands weaved perfectly together. Michelle Basson is wearing a pink dress with white puff sleeves, the kind Anne of Green Gables used to dream about. It is picture day, and every little smile on the screen is preserved in 70s sepia film. Michelle Basson brings her Int'l Super 40 Greats record to class the last day before Christmas break, that annual sacred day when everyone's mom sends their kid to school with red and green baking. It is 1975, and when Michelle spins her record, Terry Jacks says her name through the needle. So she twirls and smiles as if he is singing to her, as if she is the only Michelle in the world, as if her name is a shrine that no one could shatter if they tried. Michelle Basson hands her record to Mary to borrow over Christmas break. Mary remembers the gesture 46 years later in a Facebook message to me, lamenting the way Michelle has been forgotten. How Google can't find her life or her murder now that time has found more pressing horrors to showcase. But there's still the photo and the memory and Terry Jack singing farewell. Another fun fact about that poem is when I was trying to write it, I listened to the album, the K-Tel Super 40 Greats 1975. And I was trying to get inspiration, and Seasons in the Sun by Terry Jacks came on. And in that song, it says, "Goodbye, my shell. It's hard to die. Goodbye, my shell, my little one," something like that. And I was like, oh, okay. It felt like it was one of those moments where you're like, oh, some supernatural's got to be real. I don't know. Like it just felt it was quite shocking, and I wanted to include that. But yeah, I don't want to drone on for too long. I want to share the stage with these incredible people.
I will also read two poems. The first was published in, is everything okay?
Oh, yeah. Just want to see you.
Oh,
Caitlin.
hello, it's me. The first was published in Epoch magazine, which is a Scottish magazine. It's called In Conversation with Gender Euphoria, which feels uniquely appropriate for a Women's International Writers panel. They touch my shoulder lightly in the kitchen. Their shadow is blue and glowing. They want me to take a break from my wine-soaked arguments with dysphoria. They ask me the question I still cannot answer, and from beneath sparse eyelashes that sit like clearings in the forest, they beckon me to sit closer. My mouth opens as if by instinct, a birth canal. I say, my gender is body hair cultivated until there are small, charming swamps all over my being. I'll hang signs that read, enter only with invitation and reverence. My gender is lilac running shoes and the promise of my small feet kicking up dust in the gravel. My gender is the grit that stays on the tongues of passerbys. My gender is hair cut short to draw focus to my round, fat face, make me a stop sign. People see, pause, and carry on. My gender is bright lipstick without cover-up, accentuate the blood running just beneath my skin. My gender is alive. My gender is pink milk glass shattered on concrete, sharp and beautiful and glittering. My gender is gin with lemon and grenadine. My gender is dipped in mercury, reflecting the sun and the moon respectively. What I speak leaves me heaving, sweaty, and smiling. Euphoria cradles my damp head in their hands and tells me they adore the world I've created. I hold the blood and gore gently in my hands, then place it in the cradle I've always had inside my chest. Thank you. All right, I'll read one more, and this one is untitled. My pleasure is defined in relation to the boxes piled in my mother's bedroom. They're labeled straight wife, woman, pure. Pure. I'm named after the idea. There's a force within me that wants to hold my throbbing daydreams over the fire, to refine them, to change them. Instead, I will unpack each box generously, use the gentle hands of a lover unbuttoning a starched collar, sigh to myself, it's been a long day, and this is too tight around your neck.
So good. Okay. Disclaimer, my mom watched one of my readings with her sisters when my chapbook came out, and they turned it off. Because I talk a lot about sex in it, and they didn't have that disclaimer beforehand. Yeah, so
She's got to get used to that.
yeah.
My parents just don't tell me. They're like, yeah, I read your book.
No, I got a warning. I'll read the one that upset them the most, just because I think it's fun. Okay, it's called The Complex Female Character Complex. It's after a Rain Fisher Kwan essay where she kind of coins this idea of complex female characters represented in film and media. So each of these stanzas represents one of the ones I like. But my mom didn't have that context, so she thought these were my own personal desires. Okay. Suppressing the urge to fuck a hot priest, yelling at your mom until she hates you, burdening the high school English teachers, thinking about driving into a wall, wrecking that nice boy with low self-esteem, traumatized but hot, you're just a hole. Nice. Wow. That's what a 21-year-old writer brings to an open mic.
It's exciting. That's what I said.
We'll do this
I
one
don't
too
have
then.
longer. It's okay.
We're all in this together. Yeah, we're all in this together. Victoria. There's free birth control online. Thanks to the breedable and submissive men busy fingering fish jaws on their Tinder profiles and posting front-facing mirror selfies with flash, unapologetic that Chris Brown or X is first on their Spotify Wrapped. Don't look at their Twitter likes. Don't risk opening Snapchat to see that the selfie you posted got them hard, and they documented it because every female, yes, that's what they call women, obviously wants blinding dick pics, and every female likes to give head, so they type you up and say you're ugly and they're happy your dad's dead. When you don't respond within seconds. The Hey Mamas lesbians on TikTok, the indie hipster couples looking for a third, and the Ellen DeGeneres lookalikes, Disney adults, so-called nice guys, are never as nauseating, but just so fucking unfuckable. I understand why vibrators are advertised beneath every tweet, because everything shared online is a turnoff that's more effective than a chastity belt. So femme-seleninity is the least embarrassing option, and until I can look past these indiscretion, a girl needs to get off somehow.
And your mother didn't like it.
I don't know why. Yeah, neither did my aunt.
I can see that for some reason.
Sorry, Linda. You're
No. This is, yeah. The only thing that's not allowed here are little children, right? That rocks. Okay, so now we're opening the floor to anyone here who wants to do a reading. Who's ready? Okay.
Shall we?
Can you guys mute? Yes, sit wherever you like. Oh, and let's
will.
thank our panelists. Thanks. Laptop is muted.
My items.
There you go.
Listening to tonight's presentation, first, my name is Jack. Listening to tonight's presentation, I feel very fortunate. As much as I understand the inequity of male and female, I personally don't experience it. See, I was raised by my mom because my dad worked. My mom didn't raise me to be a man, but to be a person. And this is how I view everyone as a person. And so I find it difficult to understand this fight. And I think as long as we fight, we're going to lose. Not that the man is going to win or the female is going to win, but we lose because we give in to who we're not, the person. If that helps people to grow a little, I hope it does, but that's what I got out of this. I write because words are powerful. I'm up here presenting because the spoken word is more powerful than the written word. The written word brings out the emotion of the reader. The spoken word brings out the emotion of the writer. So for me, it's more powerful. And this is what it's really all about, expressing so that we can help each other to be more powerful within who we are as a person. All right. Anyways, I've been only writing a short time. I learned about writing as a result of a crisis. My life was in turmoil, and I turned to a book written by a female about journaling. And it just taught me how to get emotions out, how to be expressive, and I wrote. But then I discovered that I enjoyed writing, and I began to try to fine tune it and make expression out of it, inspiring expression. This piece I wrote as being part of a group. We were meeting in Midland, and the theme was for October as above, so below. And I wrote it based on a poem that was read the prior month. So I took the title, A Birthday, and I put it to the theme as above, as below, so below. I'm just gonna take a little breath. Okay. How silent the explosion, setting a world in motion, giving birth to the whole and the individual soul. Quite orderly, without commotion. Both were planned from the beginning, each expanding and always growing, spiraling into formation, subdividing and differentiating. For what purpose, asks the mind, the answer elusive, not easy to find. There is no surprise as to the beauty, only awe, wonderment, and benvenuti. Many a guess as to the why, but simply enjoy the experience, just try. A quantum leap, a universe born, a precious child to be adored. After all, it's a day to remember, a day set aside from all the rest to surrender, a day that is known as a birthday. Of course, November the theme was remember. So, remember when the world was young and pure, known only as paradise for sure. Remember when the food we ate was picked, fresh with great taste and smell. Remember when the water we drank was cool and refreshing, clean and clear and always quenching. Remember when the air we breathed filled us complete with such energy. Remember when freedom was not won on the battlefield, but the very existence of our being. So please listen well when I ask you to remember those who give and gave their lives to save our souls. After all, they most of all remember when, least we forget. This is a little romance. I wrote this for my fiance. I didn't have a title for it, but I call her my little farfallina, my little butterfly. My little farfallina, as you flutter and float in your colorful coat on nature's own current, graceful in every moment, unlimited by the endless skyway, dazzling in every display, you dance the wind away. It's beautiful to watch that little magical hopscotch, for the world and I adore you as we join in mid-air rendezvous.
Next. Nick, you want to go? Or Bruce? Are you gonna bring anything? Oh, I'm surprised.
Poem untitled. I give up before I even try. Self-doubt draws a line to define my dreams will never be mine, but not this time. There will be no rewind to the past. Life's difficult, so adapt even when your psyche wants to snap in half. Confidence is a feeling I cannot lack. For one misstep and I'll fall back into fear's familiar panic attack. I have to pick up the slack, be both wide receiver and quarterback. If I don't act, anxiety will sack my goal so far off the track that my future will crash. And with one rash dash of rapid ash, I will become a spectator to my own demise, but not this time. From darkness, I'll fly like a phoenix bound for the sky, flying high, flames blazing, passion engaging. Progress takes patience, practice, the perfect agent for rebirth. Hesitation meets scorched earth as I watch my depression burn. Regret, I've learned a lot from you, like what I need to do so I never feel you again. If a dream lives rent-free inside your head, then send it out. Don't let it build a house. Use the key inside your mouth and lock it down. There's no more room for doubt. It's time to show this world what your passion is all about.
Anybody else have anything for us?
Yeah, you get up here.
What's going on? Oh.
Well, for International Women's Day, I thought I had probably 3 poems that were most appropriate. This first one is in admiration for the women of Ukraine, because so many of them, tens of thousands, have had to leave with their children and their family, leaving their partner behind because they're not allowed to leave. And I saw an interview on TV about an older woman who was rummaging through blown up buildings. And she said, I watched my husband die. I've lost my son. And now life is very difficult. So this is the first one. It's called Left Behind. It must have been serendipity when I brought my knock to your door. I was only bringing generosity, but your eyes did knock me to the floor. The war, the stench, the void, the death resonate throughout and don't allow for escape. The residential dread leaves generations in stealth, and their futures remain never to take shape. To know that you've been left behind on your own because your loved ones were taken away, and now your hands are down to the bone to protect your child and your right to stay. I didn't expect your vulnerability unfurled, an existence defined by a million fears. Why do I reside in a different world just to remember your soulful tears? You're not alone in your courageous fight. I will visit you until we fill your need. I hope I can bring some respite despite this hellhole where so many must bleed. This is one I wrote early 90s. And the next 2 are about the 2 women in my life, the most important women in my life. And this first one is sitting back there, and her name is Sharon. As we were talking about tonight, I purposely didn't tell her that I was going to read this one, but she's going to remember. It's called Ode to Be By Her. To be lured by her glance is to savor the anticipation, the excitement, the hunt, the rapture. To be discovered by her child is to find the youthful spirit and exuberance, that which once escaped and eluded me. To be privileged by her attention is to share with her, my trusted companion, the likes of which I've never known. To be favored by her heart is to fully absorb her acceptance as I am, and that for which I stand. To be confronted by her fortitude is to understand and respect the rose that survives the fury of the storm. To be embraced by her compassion is to sense the depth of her soul that shelters me and holds me in her protection. To be entrusted with her care is to perceive how precious the innocence that I covet deep in the palm of my hand. To be loved by her is to realize the fulfillment of a dream of happiness, peace, and serenity. To be in love with her is to capture, nurture, and preserve the wondrous jewels of her intimate essence. Almost got me crying. And this last one is about mothers, but more specifically about the things that my mother represented in my life. And I know that Sharon feels the same way about her mother. It's called You Played With Me. When I questioned the world with all its manners and ways, you played with me. And my bike and scooter opened the pathways upon which I built a life of passion, kindness, and fulfillment. When I was building and redoing and destroying and conquering, you worked with me, and my building blocks transformed into the life principles and values, the cornerstones of my solid grounding and my character. When I was lonely and feared, my broken dreams, my lost loves, and vanishing expectations, you cuddled with me. And my dolls and toy soldiers transcended into friends and partners with whom I shared a lifetime of strong, meaningful connections. When I launched into my most outrageous dreams and fantasies of travel and conquest, you dreamed with me. And your cookies and cupcakes flourished into food for my soul and an appreciation for the humble things that bring resonance to life. When I felt stupid, worthless, and unaccomplished, you stayed with me. And the cards and games turned into challenges, enigmas, and quests, expanding my mind and spirit and my hunger for knowledge. There's only 26 pages, don't worry. When I hungered for more and cursed my here and now, you sat with me, and your patience and care helped me to see the many possible tomorrows filled with joy, excitement, and adventure. When I felt broken, unloved, and insecure, you wandered with me in the garden, in the forest, by the pond, and in the fields. And the natural beauty turned me inward to help me find my sense of self. When I looked to the future and felt lost and disoriented, you planned with me. And all your wisdom, knowledge, and love for me turned into building blocks for the foundation of my life. From the time of my wonder and discovery to my flight into personal significance and identity, you imagined with me. And your loving gifts revealed to me that the simplest acts of love would create indelible bonds and purpose into every moment of my life. You played with me, and that's all I needed.
We need to do some audiobooks of your poems, I think.
Yeah.
Do we have anyone else?
Be soon.
Soon, yeah, awesome. Anybody? No? Okay. Oh, Colleen's got something. A sentence or two away from finishing a very short, like microfiction thing, and the panelists were just like standing on the chairs over here. Take everything off. Unmute. Okay. As long as they can hear me. Okay, so this is a story about the day my mother passed away, or technically it's like a couple days after. Seems like that my writing is always very dark, and my painting and art is my visual art's my bright side, I guess. Yeah, fuller, yeah. So it's called The Moment She Left. I didn't want her to be alone when the machine stopped forcing her broken heart to beat. I couldn't be with her either, so I looked out a window at a desolate March scene as her besties held her hands on the other side of the door. I didn't feel guilty. 3 days earlier, I had witnessed her soul leave her body. It was subtle, nothing like a Hollywood movie scene with a crazy ethereal green mist floating away. I had mixed emotions as a priest stood over her, giving her final sacrament, his Bible open in one hand with a small bottle in the other. When he read aloud from the good book, through the holy anointing, may the Lord in his love, her shoulders loosened. She held the weight of a decision she made as a young mother. When told her 1-year-old baby had cerebral palsy, she firmly refused when those doctors advised her to leave her baby in a nursing home and forget him. In a time and a world when disabilities were hidden in closets and concealed in warehouses, my mother stood against the grain. My brother was my first love because of this. When Father What's-His-Face put oil on her forehead, the tense determination she had always held in her forehead relaxed. He continued, and mercy help you with the grace of the Holy Spirit. I remembered the hurt in her hazel eyes when Dad was drinking, and much later when he gambled away their retirement. The love they felt for each other kept them fighting for their marriage, but it never lightened the load she carried. When the priest read, may the Lord who frees you from sin, the folds of either side of her mouth softened, tightness around her lips released. So many stories flew out of her mouth, always many words, sinful, angry, kind, thoughtful. By the time he finished the prayer, save you and raise you up, my mother's face was devoid of all of what made her her. A woman who had felt ripped off by life and abandoned by God, she was adamant he did not exist. Yet I felt her leave this life the moment her last rites were concluded. I held her hands, gnarled and twisted by arthritis, which had just days before knit blankets and tiny hats for preemies, wishing her back to me. Thank you, guys. Okay, so the next word up is Thursday, April 13th. We'll be talking with the profoundly published Bruce Meyer and a multidisciplinary artist and writer, Lynn Hutchinson Lee, about writing flash fiction. So you can join us to learn why they think it's beneficial for writers of all genres to develop their writing, in this way. And we have a workshop coming up Saturday, March 25th. It's online only. It's called Word Out, Media Skills for Writers and Creatives. So if you've ever wondered why some authors get on TV or how they get interviewed or, or get on all the best podcasts, this will help you learn how to get the press you need so that you can start marketing your books. And it's also kind of a cool way to start talking to other creatives because that's where I think a lot of the best podcasts and stuff are. So that's Saturday, March 25th, 10 to 3 p.m. It's only $10 because it's funded. And you can look for more information on that on word@barrie.com, or you can also sign up for our newsletter so you'll know exactly what's next. Thanks to Rhubarb Media for hosting our website, Check Energy for Zoom hosting, and the City of Barrie for their support, and the library. Yay!